Hello and welcome to the Sacristan Webinar for Mass, Holy Week, and more. This is Alexis, your Director of Music and Liturgy. Thanks for joining. Let's move on. Our agenda for this webinar is as follows. I'm going to give a brief overview of the ministry of sacristan. Then we'll move over to tips for success and some things to remember. After that, we'll dive into Holy Week and the role of a sacristan. And I'll give a brief summary of everything we've covered in this webinar. Sacristan Ministry Overview. Sacristans. Please remember you are the right hand of the priest and the liturgy director myself. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact me. My personal number is here. If you have any questions about anything, you can reach me at this number. Please remember you are the manager of the altar and the liturgical ministers. Therefore, you must be well versed in Catholic liturgy and all of our various liturgical books. I'm going to briefly cover some things that you may already know, but before Mass, preparing the altar for the Mass. The various liturgical books, the Roman Missal, the lectionary where the lectors read from, and the sacred vessels, the host to be consecrated, and the wine to be distributed, coming Easter Sunday and on. I covered that in the Extraordinary Ministers of Holy Communion webinar, but I can mention that a little bit in this webinar as well. Very important here is the attendance of the scheduled ministers. So it doesn't often happen for a lot of our masses, but life happens for some people and people may or may not come on time. So it's the sacristan's duty to make sure all of our scheduled liturgical ministers arrive 15 minutes minimum before Mass begins, because if they have not arrived at 15 minutes, it is a sacristan's duty to find a replacement. That's why it's important to get to know the congregation a little bit, talking to people, so you know exactly who can help for which Mass. During the Mass, it's also important for sacristans to watch for any and all logistical issues, including but not limited to celebrant battery replacements, which may happen from time to time. The temperature in the church, sometimes it's really hot, so keeping in mind to make sure the ACs are on, and other random emergencies that may occur. After Mass, remember to take your sacred vessels to the pre-sacristy for cleaning, and afterwards return them to the rightful place and lock. Some tips for success and things to remember. Becoming well-versed in the various books. The Ordo. The Ordo is the order of prayer in the Liturgy of the Hours and celebration of the Eucharist. This book is amazing because it has not only the liturgical colors, but all of the readings that are going to be read, whether or not we're going to sing the Glory, which psalm we're going to have, and some information about the Mass itself, as well as the various prayers that the celebrant will use for each specific Mass. The Roman Missal is much like the Ordo, in which it contains crucial information for each Mass, including celebrant prayers, blessings, etc. It's located under the credence table. Like I mentioned before and a couple of slides ago, it's important to get to know your liturgical ministers for substitutions and scheduling, and because we're a community. Let's move on to Holy Week and more. The summit of our liturgical year is the Easter Triduum. Palm Sunday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and the Easter Vigil, as well as Easter Sunday, cover the Mass of the Resurrection of the Lord. On Holy Thursday, we have the washing of the feet, making sure that during the Easter Triduum there's enough hosts to be consecrated, and remembering to strip the altar after Mass, because Good Friday the altar needs to be bare, according to the rubrics. And for our Good Friday service, just overseeing the logistics and help where needed. Remember that Good Friday is broken down into 3 parts: the Liturgy of the Word, the Adoration of the Holy Cross, as well as the distribution of communion, where the hosts are taken from the place of repose, which this year will be the chapel. And moving on to the Easter Vigil, where candle distribution, the lights and the bells for the Gloria, the pitchers and the water for the baptismal liturgy, all of these details are important. As well as on Easter Sunday, like I said, I mentioned in the Extraordinary Ministers of Holy Communion webinar. Starting Easter Sunday, we will be using 2 additional extraordinary ministers to distribute the precious blood. If you'd like more information about that, you can watch that webinar on the Extraordinary Ministers of Holy Communion. In summary, sacristans are, again, Father and my right hand. Since I'm both the director of music and the director of liturgy, I can't necessarily be 2 places at once. So you sacristans are the greatest help that I can have during Mass, because you are the eyes and the ears of Father and myself. Should anything go wrong, you all are there in support of that. So a huge thank you to all you sacristans who serve here at Holy Spirit. Remember to study the books, the Ordo and the Roman Missal. And it always helps to just talk to Father or myself, and we can better orient you should you have any questions. Also keeping in mind that you all are the managers, per se, of the Mass on the day that you're scheduled. So making sure that each lector is accounted for, and if not, finding an appropriate substitute within the time frame necessary. Again, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out to me, shoot me a text message, or come talk to me at the piano, and I'll be more than happy to help with any questions you may have. Thank you for joining the Sacristan Webinar.